There aren't a lot of ways to hype up a tier list video, in the intro at least, so you know why you're all here. I know why I'm here. There isn't a lot of foreplay involved. So instead of dealing with that, let's just lay the ground rules. Let's start with the basics. This is primarily about the event story. The tier list is going to be broken down into the following tiers: S, A, B, C, D. Now, I would like to assume that it is a pretty self-explanatory list and that I don't need to explain. For the sake of avoiding clutter, I'm going to have a few rules. Firstly, only one event gets to be in S tier. You can't have multiple peaks after all. This will definitely not be a lie later. Also, reruns will be limited to B tier, mainly to avoid cluttering up A and S tier if I allowed my favorites from last year to pollute their way upwards. Additionally, if you are a lore dump heavy event, I'm going to penalize them slightly. I like the Demons of Sami as much as everyone, but the story of the Black Forest Wills a Dream isn't much to write home about, but it does give us a ton of very interesting lore. Are those rules pretty arbitrary? Yes, but that's kind of the point. This is my tier list. Yours doesn't have to apply to these rules if you don't want it to. Also, events like CC, Trials for Navigator, and Design of Strife, I'm just not gonna rate them. They're not a story event, you can go put them wherever you want. For the sake of this, you can put them on C tier for all I care. So let's just jump straight into it. And we're gonna be starting off with Lingering Echoes. The story of Lingering Echoes is the story of two men's journey to overcome the shackles that have been placed on them due to their ancestors, and it's a pretty fantastic story. From additions to performance, the story of Ebenholz and Kryde is a tearjerker. Life in Latania for the infected is not easy despite the propaganda. Unless you are a famous musician, you get treated pretty poorly and sent straight to the slums. But for the two seeking to overcome their past, this is no obstacle. But despite their efforts, they were never more than pawns playing on someone else's chessboard. The story of the Witch King's descendant sets the stage for Zwillingstürme Im Herbst, another event we will be discussing shortly, and one that in my opinion doesn't live up to the standards set by this one. Last year the event went in S tier, and my thoughts on its quality haven't changed much since then, but due to the rules laid down, this event is going into B tier. So Long Adele has a pretty good story, Global's 4th anniversary event, and a summer one at that. Now, my opinion on summer events are pretty low, but this event surprised me. It told the heartfelt story of Eyjafjalla's return to Siesta to witness the eruption of the Siesta volcano. While here, she is looking for closure in regards to the death of her parents. She meets Dali, one of the Beast Lords, and the standout character of the event. It is through the power of Dali that Eya gets this closure. Lynn and Bison also enter a bidding war against each other for most of the event, before putting aside their differences to stick it to their parents. Their presence in this event wasn't my favourite part by a long shot, but they were a nice palate cleanser one not reading about the daughter overcoming the loss of her parents. Overall, I'd probably give this event a nice B tier, but after having received a compelling argument from a specific potato, I shall be allowing the event to be the first in A tier. Thank you, potato. Very cool. Ideal City. Listen, I do like Gavial and some of the stuff covered in this event. However, I also wish to place something in the D tier, and this is the weakest link. The story of Ideal City isn't much to write home about. Minimalist comes to the surface to seek the aid of Inam's tribe. Elysium and Tomimi are caught up in this mess and summon the aid of Gavial and Eunectes. From there, summer shenanigans happen, till the gang discover an active Originium vein, threatening to render the city uninhabitable. This doesn't lead to a panic, but to an art competition, where they shall repair the dome of their city, so that when it is found in the future, it'll be beautiful. The Durans eagerly agree to travel to the surface and live among Gavial's tribe, while Gavial goes to break Minimalist out of his depression using the medical malpractice known as blunt force trauma. Overall, I did enjoy elements of this story, but it didn't really do anything for me. I don't even think it's the worst event Arknights has ever made, so Ideal City is going into the D tier. Give me playable Enam, and I will put it into the S tier though. The Black Forest Wills a Dream is carried by its lore reveals. Now, that might sound a little mean, but hear me out. As the first real look into the country of Sami, it does a lot of legwork, building up the country we would all love to visit and the demons that inhabit it. The event tells us the story of Magellan's journey across Sami, searching for her mentor, Mariam, with the aid of Santella. On their trip, they meet the Sorka's hunter, Typhon, who lends her strength and experience to their cause. The event mainly serves as an excuse to lore dump about life in Sami and how its people survive within the inhospitable region. We do meet a number of interesting NPCs, Okup and Netkerner to be specific, and Gitano, an operator I quite like, does get some interesting focus as she journeys back to her village to learn of her brother's fate. Overall, it is an enjoyable read, although aside from being a massive lore dump, what it is really doing is serving as a jumping off point to integrated strategies 4, with the ending of the event setting the stage for Magellan, Centella, Typhon, and Valorquin's journey into the heart of Sami and the demon-infested ice fields beyond. On lore reveals alone, it would easily be a B-tier event, but its story does leave a lot to be desired, especially as it literally ends with the cast preparing for their next adventure. So, A Black Forest Will's a Dream slides into C-tier. And, carrying on from the Black Forest with the adventure our cast heads into, Integrated Strategies 4, Expeditioner's Joklumarkar, which is also carried by its lore reveals. Ranking any integrated strategies is a difficult thing to do. They do in fact have a story, but one that is buried in item descriptions, node descriptions, and of course, its multiple endings. In short, it tells the story of how humanity reclaimed the Stargate from the demons. Magellan, alongside her allies, braved the unknown, gaining Sami's blessings, allowing fallen allies to rest, and eventually reaching the gate unknown to all but a few on Terra. They confronted unknowable evil just before the Stargate, only for the timely intervention of a Beast Lord to ensure that the crew made it out alive. Once again, a common Beast Lord W. The event even allowed us a glimpse into the past, to the two great kings who marched across the foreign hotlands centuries ago to defeat the demons who resided there. Overall, the story told by this event was good. I do wish it was told to us in a more traditional style, but considering the scope, it probably would have needed to be an event or two to actually do it justice. That aside, the lore reveals went crazy this event, and that is where the integrated strategies format shines brightest. I want to put the event in A tier, but for the same reason I docked marks off of the previous event, I'll dock marks off this one. A solid B tier, but it's an A tier, in my heart. Dorothy's vision still holds up now, even when compared to the peak that follows it. The story of a scientist desperately seeking to end the suffering around her, only to create more suffering, just in a different form, is very good. Dorothy is a standout character, and I'm kinda glad in hindsight that she didn't serve a prominent role in Lone Trail. It would have been a very difficult performance to follow up. The Lone Trail build-up in this event definitely plays to the strength of Dorothy's vision. Whereas Mansfield's Break is a good event in its own right, Dorothy's vision feels far more connected to the overall story of the Ryan Labs arc than the event that preceded it. It introduced us to pivotal characters like Holeak and Kristen masterfully, giving us just enough information to be interested in learning more, while simultaneously saving those big reveals for its sequel. While Dorothy's vision might always live in the shadow of the giant that is Lone Trail, it no doubt can hold its own among some of the best events Arknights has ever released. B tier. See, if you haven't noticed by now, the fact that I'm capping reruns out of the top 2 tiers allows me to make the list way funnier, considering the glaze I'm giving some of them. Next up, we take a detour into the main story. The Whirlpool that is Passion isn't the best of Act 2's story, but I don't believe it's entirely without merit. I enjoy the varying POVs given to us in this chapter. It's something that carries into Absolved will be the Seekers. The story has some great highlights, from the death of the Duke of Windermere to Siege forming the Exemplars, to the Doctor chasing down Amia at the risk of their own life, to the battle against the Sanguinarch atop a dead god. It really does have a quite wide variety of things to enjoy. Admittedly, its changing POVs can also be a big issue, especially when during the middle of the event we spend like 2 sections in a random Victorian town with characters we don't know. Even as someone who liked it, that was certainly a decision of all time. Overall, I did like the story chapter though, so I'm gonna slot it into B tier. If you wanna argue it down to C, I honestly wouldn't put up much of an argument against it. Also, I wanna see more Tallulah in the main story. Give me the playable dragon hippogriff. I know you want the money the community would give you. Il Siracusano is an event I've changed my mind on quite a bit in the last year. It's not that I outright dislike the story of Texas's return to Siracusa, I just don't really care for her or Lapland as characters. They just never appeal to me. The event did give us Pennis, who I do like and I hope to see more of in the future, so it has that going for it. Zaro calling Texas back to her home was one of our first looks within this Syracusan city, and I enjoy that for the most part, primarily because of my glorious King Emperor, but still, any event with the best Arknights character in it can't be completely terrible, but still, Having your main antagonist mogged by a penguin is kinda pathetic, regardless of whether it's Emperor or not. Regardless, I'm gonna make this one quick and painless and shove it into the C tier. What the Firelight casts definitely falls into one of my blind spots. I love Reed, she's fantastic. No, I shall not be taking feedback on that statement, simply accept my baby girl and move on. What the Firelight cast tells a story of Reed's journey to step out of the shadow cast by her sister, a journey she undergoes to form her own version of Dublin. From reuniting and falling out with Bagpipe to forming her own little splinter of the IRA, Reed is setting herself up for a clash of ideologies with her sister Eblana. The Dublin storyline, fumbled as it may be from the potential it could have had following Chapter 9, is still one I am very much interested in. The duality between Reed and Eblana is very good stuff, and I'm looking forward to the development it receives in the future. Slotting into B tier, and if I see any comments criticizing it, assume it has been moved up even higher. This is a Reed-friendly channel. Dissenters from the message shall be burned at the stake. In Minecraft, To the Grinning Valley takes us across the land of Rimbilton. This event tells us of Amia and the Doctor's return to the country prior to the events of the Victorian crisis. The two are accompanied by Savage, and due to a series of unfortunate events, are soon joined by Alana, Wormy, Jerry, and Ray. Ray, who had previously taken Alana, Wormy, and Jerry hostage, soon finds herself becoming friends with her victims, and eventually meeting up with Amia and the Doctor. They form a larger group and travel to the Grinning Valley, where Amia hopes to find more of her past, and Ray seeks to meet the Firelight that saved her life. They never do show us the Grinning Valley, but Ray does meet a Firelight. Not the one she intended to meet, but still. It was also lovely seeing the Doctor and Amia in a more slice-of-life environment. No major stakes, no world-shattering events. It was very good. But it was still not all that much to write home about. This one slotting nicely into C tier. Where Vernal winds will never blow, made liking the sweet sibling storyline something I could do without gritting my teeth. Following reading this one and rereading Who is Real and Invitation to Wine, I finally gained an appreciation for the Sui events. The story of Yumin and the Kung Fu master who seeks to leave his legacy behind is a compelling one. Chongye is a fascinating character, one who sacrificed everything for Yan and finally wishes to claim ownership of his destiny so that he may put the sins of the Sui to rest forever. Ya serves as an interesting antagonist, an enemy of the Sui returned to receive retribution upon its fragments. It would have easily qualified for my favorite Sui sibling event last year, but a new contender has taken its crown. An easy B tier. Come Catastrophes or Wakes of Vultures gives us a rather self-contained story. Blacksteel comes to Davistown, a rundown mining town in desperate need of aid. Jessica meets with the locals and bonds with them over their suffering. She comes from money, and seeing the state these people are forced to live in hurts her deeply. The bank in the town extracts all the money it can from the people, and when they can no longer afford to pay them back, sends them to the frontier. This little bit of financial abuse is of no concern to Blacksteel, as they are here to do a job. The bank managers couldn't care less for the people of Davistown, they only want to extract all the money they can now, and profit when Columbia comes in to fix the town up. In fact, the government is in favor of this abusive system, as removing all the residents now prevents them from being problems in the future. Due to the extreme situation, Jessica turns to extreme solutions. She robs the bank for everything it's worth. And she succeeds. Even though she gets caught in the end, Coldshot escapes with the goods. This event is very character focused, and all things considered, small scale. The city of Davistown isn't going to affect the world. These kinds of abuses happen everywhere, but the way this event puts a focus on them and how our little Jessica handles the situation, poorly if her robbing of a bank didn't tip you off, is really compelling. And so, Come Catastrophes or Wakes of Vultures is our S tier event. Zwillingstürme Im Herbst is a disappointing sequel to Lingering Echoes. It tells us 3 stories primarily. The story of Ebenholz and the Witch King's hold on Latania, the story of Viviana, a young noble who never fully found her place in the world, and the story of 2 angels who seek to understand themselves on a deeper level. The scale of Zwillingstürme is large. Honestly, at points it feels like multiple events stitched together. And honestly, that's my biggest complaint with the event. I wouldn't call it terrible, but it was trying to do too much. They could have split it into 2 events and told the story better. As it is, we arrive in the capital of Lithuania, and Ebenholz gets to go to the school after being abducted and then attacked by the Witch King remnants. Then we end up at the Twin Empresses towers, and then we end up in the fucking warp. Yeah, the warp from 40k. The demons, interdimensional demons in an interdimensional plane. It really did throw a ton of lore at you, and at times felt completely disconnected. As in, if you cut Viviana's story entirely, you probably could have gotten away with it. And I liked Viviana's story, but it was not connected to the whole Witch King is living in a demon-infested realm thing. It did set up some Null stuff, so a future Null storyline is on the way. Save us, Horsewoman. Save us. This event is going into C tier. The rides to Lake Silberneherze features my beloved goat wife, Dagenverker, so it is already peak fiction. If you are assuming I have a type, you should simply not put those pieces together. The Dukes of Victoria have taken an interest in the developing nation of Kerag and have dispatched the Trilby Asher and Harold in order to get a grip on the situation. When Leto arrives to find her father and boards the train to Silberneherze alongside Harold, hilarity ensues. This event puts a lot of focus on comedy, and I'm all here for it. Dagenverker being put in these hilarious, random situations really does serve her character and makes her more than just a strong, powerful knight. It does have its serious moments though. Leto confronting her deadbeat father is a fantastic scene, and Dagenverker of course puts on her serious face when it comes to facing off with the Victorian army. However, at the heart of it, it is a very simple, laid-back event. An A tier one, for sure. Here are People's Sows, the latest event in the 3-sibling storyline, and my new favourite. Telling the story of the land Shu has spent 1,000 years cultivating. This, out of all the 3-sibling storyline events, really pushes the plot forward. Whereas the previous events were setting the groundwork, Here are People's Sows lays out the future of these events. Wang is readying himself for his final move, while Nian has gathered her siblings to oppose him, but not all of them are siding with her. Ji returns to his home to put his finishing touches on his masterpiece. He and Wang shall strike back against Yan and claim the power of Sui for their dream. Shu, however, prevents the situation from reaching the boiling point just yet. Although due to the actions she takes in this event, all the mortals who knew her have lost their memories of her. Alas, the story of Here Are People's Sows is one that shows that given enough time and patience, even when everyone forgets who you are, what you leave behind can be your legacy. Another A-tier event for me. Reclamation Algorithm 2, Tales Within the Sand, attempts to build a bridge between telling a traditional story and telling a story in a similar method to integrated strategies. It doesn't quite work, but I do enjoy the attempt. Its story is less interesting and its game mode is less compelling than a standard event and integrated strategies. Tales Within the Sand tells the story of a Rhodes Island team led by the Doctor, Eunectes, and Tuyu as they head deep into Sorgon in an exploratory venture in a region close to the foreign Hotlands. This inevitably leads them into conflict with the local Lord Emir. During their time in Sorgon, the Doctor meets pretty cool characters like Kestrel and Liaison, both of whom I love. They also meet Pepe, who I'm sure will never be relevant again. The most interesting thing this event does is give us a look into the life of the ancient Aslan king, Lugal Sorgus, the ancestor of both Siege and Pepe. Overall, I never covered the event of this channel for 2 reasons. 1, I was on holidays, and 2, I genuinely hated the original Reclamation algorithm, and I didn't want to set my biases aside to play it just yet. But I have played it now, and I can comfortably say it is a C-tier event. We got the Siege collabs coming up, so we're going to cover them back to back real quick. Lucent Arrowhead is the second Siege collab event, and it was pretty solid. Taking place a few months following the events of Originium Dust, Lucent Arrowhead takes Team Rainbow to Dustless. From there, the story follows their adventures in the city from first contact to reuniting with their other team members. While on Terra, Team Rainbow meets a lovable cast of characters, including the wonderful, soon-to-be playable Techno. Vernal is also a wonderful antagonist and creates NFTs. It's impossible not to find him endearing for that alone. The other antagonist, Matteo, certainly is a character. Yeah, that's about all I'll say on him. Keeping it short and simple, this is a B-tier event. Originium Dust being placed after Lucent Arrowhead in the event running order this year will never not be funny to me. It's been years since this event ran, and it, if you ask me, still holds up. Originium Dust tells the story of the first Team Rainbow's arrival to Terra. The team explores the land of Terra in a simple but compelling story. From witnessing the first on-screen depiction of what happens when an infected is claimed by Originium, telling us of the monsters humanity has brought to Terra with them. Originium Dust, without a doubt, falls into the same tier as its sequel, B tier. I feel like Babel is an event that doesn't require introduction. It is easily my most popular video. Well, as long as you don't count any of those memes. The tragedy that befell Teresa and the Doctor is one we should all be familiar with at this point. From the struggle to hold the Sorcas together, to the struggle to overcome the ancient curse of Oripity. This event hit the community like a comet. Everyone had to know what secrets were held by the King of Sorcas and the Ghost of Babel. An event that one could speak about for hours, but also one whose quality speaks for itself. A true step above all the events that came out this year, and potentially all the events that have ever come out. Babel resides at the very top of this tier list. Above S tier, in a tier of its own, the Babel tier. And following swiftly along from that with an event that follows it up quite closely. Absolved Will Be the Seekers is the culmination of the Victoria crisis, and what a climax it is. W digivolves into Walter, Siege finally unleashes Excalibur, and the Doctor finally meets Teresa. But more important than any of that, the young rabbit of Rhodes Island finally stands face to face with her mentor. Despite everything that the other characters go through, it is Amiya who emerges from this event as the standout character to me. She still has much to learn, but she is finally beginning her path down the road paved by Teresa in earnest. Only time will tell whether she actually manages to complete the dream that is Babel, but it is a journey I am looking forward to seeing, come success or failure. Absolved Will Be the Seekers is another S tier event for me. Also, my beautiful Night Noel makes a stunning reappearance in this event, so the S tier rating was just waiting for it. Lone Trail is the other event that competes with Babel for the title of Best Arknights event. And luckily for Babel, it's a rerun, so I am limiting its placement. Lone Trail is the culmination of the Rhine Lab storyline and tells the story of Kristen's dream. She who dreamed of the sky so much that she would risk all of Terra just to see it. The event is filled with an incredible cast of characters. Horleak, Saria, Silence, and of course my beloved water elf Mulesies, to name a few. This event was also the first real dig into the Doctor's race as a concept. The predecessors are without a doubt something that is becoming more and more relevant as time goes on, so look forward to that. Lone Trail is another event that is breaking the tier list rules, I fear. Yes, it is my tier list, so I can ignore them. Lone Trail is an A tier event. I'm only bending the rules a little, but for real though, putting it in B tier did feel like an insult. On a side note, I think I currently prefer Babel to it, but we shall see if that's true next year. Path of Life is a pretty solid event. Our first journey into the watery depths of Ija was a good ride. We met cool new characters like Blandus and Underflow, which were a joy to read about, even if one of them tried to get our beloved hunters killed. We also met characters like Cassia, and the less said about her the better, but we also got to put a face onto the Seaborn. Mortis as a human face to the Seaborn works quite well, and I'm hoping we get to see a lot more of him in the future. I do have my complaints, which you can hear about in the dedicated video to Path of Life, but for the most part, I do like the event. I do think it's setting up for a Act 3 or potentially future main story content, but only time will tell where the main story is heading. Overall though, it's a very solid B tier. Hortus de Escapismo is a lovely, self-contained event, relatively speaking anyway. It's a pseudo-sequel to Guide Ahead and a prequel to Zwillingstürme Im Herbst. One that also surpasses its sequel, so yet another Zwillingstürme L in this tier list I fear. We follow local artist Executor on his journey to a cathedral, long lost. Tasked with returning the city to Laterano, his job is made far more complicated due to the Sorcas now calling it their home. With the Church of the Deep and even his fellow Laterano envoys working against him, Executor is forced to tackle the situation from an unorthodox angle, all the while faced with a reunion with Arturia. The story is filled with shocking moments, which you might be able to figure out, considering the CG I'm using on screen. Overall, I would say it's an easy B tier event to round out this video. Now, the tier list is looking a little strong in the middle, but remember, this is a rather doctored list. If I ignored some of the rules I set for myself, at least some of these reruns would be at least A tier if not higher. But this is the list as it stands, and I want to make it clear to you, if you are in a B tier, you are a very good event. Maybe not fantastic, but great. And C tier I would consider just pretty good, bordering on being kinda mid, but unless you're in D tier, I don't think you really gotta worry about me considering the event bad. Overall, I want to say that this is a very good year for Arknights events. We got peak fiction, we got close to peak fiction, and we got, of course, some, I won't say bad, I won't say mid, good events. A lot of just solid good events, without much to complain about, but also nothing massive and major. That's not a bad thing. I think having these really solid good events beats having some really fantastic events and some really bad events. So overall, I would like to say fantastic year for Arknights story in Gyos. And I want to just thank you, the good people of the Bionic Factory 1 channel, subscribed or not. It's been a great year, and I really appreciate all the support you gave me during 2024. Here's to another year of producing Bionic Slop. Y'all be good people, and I will see you in the next one.